Good evening, Libertarians. My name is Dan Fishman. I am the Executive Director of the Libertarian Party, and you are watching Libertarians at Large, which means that, as always, I am joined by the at-large members of the Libertarian Party. Let me introduce Erik Raudsep from North Carolina, Valerie Sarwark from New Hampshire, and Dr. Laura Ebke coming to you from Nebraska. Guys, it's been a really slow news week. I don't know that we have anything to talk about. But let's start off with how do you guys feel right now? How do you feel about the election, the voter turnouts, all of these things? Because so much stuff has happened, it's hard to put it all into perspective. So, Senator Ebke, why don't we start with you? How do you feel right now?
I feel a little brain dead, a little bit exhausted, mentally exhausted, because as a political scientist, I've been watching this stuff. I'm a junkie, and so I'm getting my fix right now. It's too long of a fix for me, I think. So I've found it fascinating. Now I will tell you that in Nebraska we had a pretty decent showing. Our U.S. Senate candidate Gene Sidek got about 7% of the vote, which
Wow.
we were pretty excited about. We increased our numbers in terms of registered voters in the month between October 1st and November 1st. So we had some good things happen for sure. But there's a lot of room to grow and work in the future. But at the presidential level, I'm just exhausted.
Sure. Well, and as you should be, because right now where we are is an exhausting thing. And so before I go to Valerie and ask how you feel, I thought I would share where we are right now. This is the latest count. And I think most of the media sources will agree on this, that Joe Biden has 264. Now, obviously, there's a recount underway in Wisconsin. Oh, delicious. I like it when the angry people get it in. I'm tempted to share the comments from the angry people, but
Oh boy.
all right. But so 264 for Biden and 214 for Donald Trump, and Nevada is 6 electoral votes, and that's the one that is most projected to go to Biden. The others are sort of in competitive, or at least somewhat competitive, but Nevada seems likely to go to Biden, and that would make it 270. Now, if Alaska, which probably will go to Trump, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia all end up going to Trump, and Nevada goes, we would have 270 to 268, which would be, of course, the closest electoral vote that we've ever had, and leaves the country in a very interesting place. So I come back to Valerie Sarwark. Val, how are you feeling right now?
I don't even know. I thought today was Monday, and it's just been really strange with all these recounts. And I mean, did you guys see President Trump today with his really sad pep talk? I don't even know what that was. It's just been really, really strange. What was I going to say? And okay, 1% of the people voted for Joe, and we're getting blamed for this. Why don't you talk to the people that didn't vote? Why don't you talk to the people that voted for Biden? It's just I feel like Laura. I feel brain dead right now. No idea.
And one of the interesting things about it, and I want to pull up this story that big thing on Fox News, and I'm kind of setting Erik up so that he can talk about this. Did Biden get an edge from libertarian vote in critical swing states? And of course, and to be fair, they did some real reporting here. Joe Jorgensen receives the second highest number of votes in the party's 49-year history. So
they said her name.
Well, that sentence is unusual for Fox because it has 4 facts in one sentence. That's probably their record for this campaign cycle. But it's a really good point in that. Oh my God! See, I never use Internet Explorer. Look at all these ads. I don't know how people deal with it. But they're right about this. Now, there's an interesting thing here at the end, and this is what I want us. I'm going to throw it out to Erik first to comment on. Well, all right. So this is from the head Republican strategist who's blaming us for his loss. He said the Libertarian Party is not gaining raw vote popularity. All right, now see, that's more Fox's speed. That's one fact, completely wrong. Percentage. They get their 1% reliably. Okay, that's not true.
Nope.
Last election, obviously, we were not. So there's only one election recently where we've gotten 1%. But their tiny number is highly leveraged. That means their agenda has newfound power on the national scene. I expect that the major parties will spend much more attention to reaching out to libertarians as allies going forward. Now, I think that I could correct that and say, replace reaching out with suppressing, and it would be more accurate. But getting some coverage like that leads me to our obvious question. Erik, you're next. How do you feel, Erik?
Actually, I feel energized. Obviously we're disappointed with how the presidential race has come out, because we were all hoping for the 5.1%. But there's so many other victories around the country. I mean, state senators and, amazing showings. Ricky Harrington, can we talk about him for a second?
Absolutely.
I mean, my gosh, 33% of the vote. Those are the types of victories that, we have to take solace in, take stock, see what worked, and grow from there. So actually, okay, election day is over. We get to, I'm taking a couple of days off, but there's still plenty of game to run. So, it's amazing.
You raise a great point that, you say there's plenty of game to run. You talked about Ricky Dale Harrington, 33% in Arkansas, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Right? It is the
new
highest
record.
Yeah, right. It's the highest percentage total for a Libertarian Senate candidate ever. But we had a lot of other amazing results, including a lot of victories.
Oh, absolutely.
So Marshall Burt is elected to the state house in Wyoming. Kalish, all right, I'm going to forget the last name already. Kalish Morrow is elected to city council in California. Who else is there?
There's a ton.
Yes, I just didn't want to say them all. I wanted to give you guys the lead in. Trish Butler in Tennessee. I mean, across the country, we had wins. Kara Schultz is reelected in Minnesota. It was a strong showing for libertarians.
Oh, absolutely.
And one of the things about it is that as we see libertarians rising up, Wendy Hewitt in Calamasa, California, I mean, just across the board, there were wide selections of victories. Thank you, Michelle. Alan Esposito in Maine. All these things. And somebody wants, please, people in the comments, post your winners, the ones that you want us to talk about. As we see these wins in down ticket races, it's really pretty exciting because we know that these are people who actually outperformed general expectations, right? Nobody thinks, oh, the Libertarian Party is winning, except for us, because we know that we are winning races at the local level. How exciting is it for you guys to see that level of success, electing somebody at the state house? And I'll throw it out. Who wants to go first and talk about local races and how you feel about those?
I will.
Yeah, good.
I will, because I've been
locally elected to the state house.
Yeah. Well, and I've been promoting this for the last 4 years. Ever since joining the Libertarian Party, that we need to build our bench, if you will. That because we don't have the advantage of the old parties, it's a lot harder for somebody to just step into a higher level race who's never been elected to anything. So when I start seeing city council members and county commissioners and mayors and school board members who are libertarians, who then after 2 or 4 years can show that they have a base of support, that they are able to govern responsibly, it makes it a whole lot easier, I think, to run at the next level. And the R's and D's have been doing this for years. They see somebody who they think is promising, and they find an empty seat for them to run for, and they get them elected. And then, they start to climb up the ladder. And so I think that, we need to start thinking strategically that way, and getting more and more people elected at the local level, and, run serious campaigns at the local level, because just running to have your name on the ballot doesn't always work. And let me just say, we've got Kansas is here, and we got Nebraska people online. This is awesome.
Right. I mean, Great Plains are really showing up, and that win in Kansas, James Doyle, that's really exciting, because a city council race is one of the places where, most of the time city council is technically a nonpartisan race, but I mean, it depends on where you are. In Boston, everybody runs with, the giant city. But a city council is a place where, when you get elected to it, you get people to see that even though you're a libertarian, you don't have horns in your head, right? No tail. Well, some of us. And we're rational people. We actually, so we had an elected libertarian in Massachusetts who was on all things, the cemetery committee. I don't know why that is an elected position. But when he worked with people, they were astonished to find that he didn't want to close the cemetery, dig up all the bodies, move them somewhere else. They're like,
turn it over to the free market.
Exactly. When in reality, what we want. I mean, this may be a little naive, but I like to think that most Americans want the same end goal, right? We want us all to be able to live prosperously and free. It's just a difference of how we think we're going to get there. But one of the things that I saw today, a comment that was posted, was the Libertarian Party is the only party that does not require you to hate either Republicans or Democrats. And that's an interesting thing, because that's where we are right now, right? Republicans or Democrats are being taught hatred. And that's a really different thing. I see you nodding along, Val. That means you get to talk to this issue.
No, I was thinking about that today. Like, they're mad that we didn't vote for them. Both sides are mad that we didn't vote for them in one way or another. And we're stealing votes from both sides. But, the truth is, they don't want three parties, but they don't want two parties either. They just want one party. They want their party. And that's like this team red and team blue thing. Like, why don't you just go through the issues, be an informed voter, and vote for the best person? And I was making thank you calls today, and some of the people were getting like 3-5%. That's not great, but 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 people voted for them. And those people who maybe weren't registered libertarians got to hear a different viewpoint, got to hear a different message. And now, are they more informed? Probably, because they listened to this person who maybe they were told not to agree with, but they voted for them. And hopefully, that we just shift the needle a little bit. But yeah, no, we don't hate anybody. They hate us.
Right. Well, and one of the interesting things about that, though, is that, the old parties have this attitude of, we own your vote. One of the things that was very interesting in 2016, I think I've mentioned this before. I have a friend who owns a construction company, and all the union bosses voted for Hillary Clinton, but all the union rank and file voted for Donald Trump. This is a construction company. I'm sure other unions had different things. But afterwards, the bosses came out and said, what are you guys doing? Why are you guys are supposed to vote Democrat. That's part of what being in a union is, stuff like that. Like, they own their votes.
Right.
We're the only one who says, you know what? Vote your conscience all the time, because we believe that if you vote your conscience, you're probably going to end up voting Libertarian. And, there's some issues. Go ahead, Erik.
It goes actually a lot further than that. If you look at not what the parties say, but you look at what the R's and D's actually do, their philosophy on government is completely different. They believe that the people derive their power from the government. So the government owns you and their vote. Whereas the Libertarian Party is unique in the American political landscape, because we actually believe and put our words and our money where the road meets the rubber on the fact that the government receives its power from the people. And that is the ideological difference. That's why when you ask a libertarian which one is better or which one is worse, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, well, we don't see any difference because they're ideologically the same, because they believe that the people are owned by the government. And that's how their legislation is set up today.
I agree with you 100%. And you make me think of one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is that governments are instituted among men to secure these rights, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson just knocking it out of the park there. And consent is a critical thing. We don't really talk about that a lot, but libertarianism is consent culture. It's the idea that nobody gets to touch you without your permission. Nobody gets to take money from you without your permission. Nobody gets to sniff your hair without your permission. All these things. And consenting is, and what's interesting is, I think that this generation, I don't know what they are. They're not millennials anymore. Whatever is the generation that's coming up now, that they get it because every time you go to a website, you have to opt in, right? That's understood now. That is the expectation. Nobody can track you without your consent, right? Maybe they won't show you the content if you don't let them put cookies on your browser or anything like that. And like, I mean, a lot of places have firewalls. You know, you have to sign over your firstborn child to read the New York Times, that sort of thing. But generally, all of these groups say, you know, we express consent. We require consent. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, libertarians are finding a lot better place for ideas, because people understand consent is everything. Because every issue that we talk about, right? Every issue comes down to consent. Or
I think
coercion.
Jeremy actually just kind of hit on the point over in the comments there. You know, when people express what they believe, they're almost always libertarian, but they feel like they're trapped in the duopoly, and then they go vote Republican or Democrat.
I agree with that 100%, Jeremy. That's a very, very smart comment. Please keep giving us those good lines. And I agree with you 100%, and I agree with Jeremy 100%. If you ask anybody if they think they should be somebody else's boss, nobody ever says, "Oh yeah, I should be in charge of your health care," or "I should be in charge of, you know, your child's education," or, you know, how you give your money to charity. Nobody ever thinks that's a good idea. But that's all government is.
Yeah.
The government is nothing else besides that. And one of the things about it, I think we're seeing a lot more, is that there are people who are searching for the American dream. And I'm going to say that, you know, we all have different interpretations of what the American dream is. But the fundamental idea, the ability to do what you want, to find a way to be of service to your fellow man. So this is one of the things, whenever I say this, people are like, that's what it's all about. In America, right, you get paid if you have a service that other people want to buy. We believe that you should find a way to be of service to humanity. And how noble is that idea that you want to serve humanity? And what we find is that the Republicans and the Democrats are trying to stop people from doing that through either, you know, licensing fees or regulations. They want to stop people from finding all these ways to serve humanity, to squash entrepreneurs. And that's one of the reasons that I think we're seeing a lot more options, because, you know, sort of in the gig economy. And then, now let me throw this out. The gig economy actually had a big win in California. And as our resident expert on these sort of regulations, Dr. Ebke, have you been following the law that passed in California?
I haven't been following it very carefully of late. So
the essence of that's okay. No, it's fine. That's why it's a live show. I'm going to throw it to Valerie, who
California.
I know all. No, California, right? What did I say?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I just said it's California. I'm in Nebraska.
Right. Exactly. Well, so the interesting thing about it is, and this is, a lot of people know this stuff. A lot of people are affected by this, because California passed a law where they said that Uber drivers and other gig economy people had to be counted as employees for a company. And essentially, if you did something that was different than your normal area of expertise for a company, then you couldn't be a contractor for them. So unless you were a professional driver, an Uber driver couldn't drive Uber without being considered an employee of a company. So obviously, Uber and other big companies got invested in this. One of the things that it affected actually right away was the freelance writing market, because all the websites that employed freelance art writers who produced 500 words of copy a month, they suddenly had to declare them as employees if they worked in California. So a lot of companies laid off people because they couldn't afford to keep them around anymore, and they couldn't hire them to just produce one thing. But California voted almost very overwhelmingly, 2/3, to say, yes, you can classify these people as contractors. Now, obviously, it's well-funded. Uber and Amazon and a bunch of other companies were behind it. But it's a big change because people want the ability to provide a service, and that's what Uber provides, and that's what the country provides, right? Is this fertile thing that if you have an idea, you should be able to try to find a way to get paid doing that. So that's my rant. I feel bad that I went on a little bit about it, but that's one of my things. Is it time for the news quiz?
It's time for the news quiz.
All right, here we go.
Exercise our brains.
Exercise
How
our brains.
stupid we are.
Now, what's interesting about it is that this is obviously last Friday, so there's going to be, not any questions about the election, but some interesting stuff. Amy Coney Barrett was approved as the newest member of the Supreme Court. Which sitting justice administered the constitutional oath to her on Monday night?
I know.
We should all know that it's Justice Clarence Thomas.
Yes.
Was
It
it?
is Clarence Thomas. And
Well,
it's
I
interesting
mean,
because
Trump went on and on about the fact that only in this case would the Democrats be upset that a black man was swearing a woman in to the Supreme Court. So,
right. Yeah. Janet is the first of our viewers to chime in with the correct answer. Janet, for your prize, you get the non-existent Libertarian keychain. Maybe we should have a keychain. It's actually not a bad idea. I'll tell you what. Let me make a little pitch for those of you who are watching at the bottom. lp.org/join. If you're not a member of the Libertarian Party, just become a member. $25 a year, or you can do $5 a month, whatever you want. That actually, what you'll get our newsletter. If you do the $5 a month thing, you get the pledge letter, which comes out every month. But you'll be a lot more aware of the libertarian events that are going on. As an example, in Dallas on Tuesday night, Joe Jorgensen had a election victory party. I mean, it wasn't a victory party because we didn't win the presidency, but it was victory in that we had a presidential candidate on the ballot in all 50 states. Being aware of what we're doing and what the Libertarian Party is doing, that's something that you guys can join the Libertarian Party. Look, somebody just joined the Libertarian Party of Indiana today. Very good job. David Valente says that you should become a lifetime member like him. I mean, David Valente is one of those guys that I try to emulate. I mean, except for that Buffalo Sabres fan thing. But other than that, all right, question number 2. The Supreme Court decisions issued Wednesday allow officials in 2 battleground states to accept ballots for days after this coming Tuesday's election. Which of those states? Is it Michigan and Wisconsin, Ohio and Florida, Pennsylvania and North Carolina, or Texas and Georgia?
okay, because I live in North Carolina, I know the answer. It's Pennsylvania and North Carolina.
Well, that's going to be hard for somebody to beat. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the question first among the audience. I'm watching right now to see where it is. But yeah, so it's it's an interesting thing because one of the things that we're seeing in the election right now is that the votes that are uncounted in Pennsylvania are all mail-in ballots. Mm-hmm. Valente wins. Valente, you get a keychain. And they're speculating that most of the mail ballots that are left to be counted are going to be Biden because Trump told people not to vote it by mail.
Yep.
Right? He said, better you stay home and don't vote at all than you vote by mail.
Yeah.
He kind of has himself really to blame for some of the problems that he's seen. And I don't know if anybody saw this. Right before we went on, he gave his little speech from the press conference, and complaining about how all of a sudden these votes are going away. Well, the problem, of course, is that that he told people not to vote, by mail. The Democrats had a really good vote by mail plan, and then they made sure that there were states that, over the course of the last 6 months, a number of states have tried to allow for their mail-in votes to be counted either as they come in or the day of the election while everybody else is still voting. So before the polls close, and they wouldn't let them do that. The legislatures in those states, Michigan, I think, was one, and Pennsylvania maybe was one. But the Republicans didn't want them to be able to count votes early. So the fact that they are counting live votes, the day of votes first, is obviously, it is obviously going to give Trump the advantage, and then the mail-in votes, which the Democrats really pushed, are going to give Biden the advantage. So it really shouldn't be that difficult to understand, but they seem to be having a problem with that.
Yeah, one of the things that I thought was astonishing about it is that, it's so much easier for people to vote by mail that, you want people to have that option because you can have the ballot sitting there for a couple days as opposed to, if you only have in-person voting, it's only that day you have to go, there's a line, something might come up that day, you get a flat tire. Why risk any of those things? But then the other thing about it, and this is the part that I just didn't understand. You know what it is? I don't think people understand what vote by mail is and how it works. So for those of you who don't know, I voted by mail this year. When you mail in your ballot, there's an outside envelope, and I can't remember what it's called right now. It's like the security blanket or something like that. But it identifies you. It actually is. And so I saw somebody post said, no voting by mail, require voter ID. Dude, voting by mail is so much more requiring ID than anything else that happens anywhere in the country because it shows that it was delivered to you and that you filled it out. Now, there might be some case where, maybe a ballot got stolen out of the mailbox, but if a ballot got stolen out of the mailbox and you ask for it, you can report that and nobody can use that one and they'll give you a new one. Those numbers are all available when it goes in. And then what they do is they tear off the sheet of paper that identifies who you are. And then your ballot goes into anonymously into a big vat to be counted. Maybe there's some people somewhere who are like, oh, I worry that, they're going to look at it and they're going to see, Dan Fishman in Prince George's County. Prince George's County goes overwhelmingly Democrat and they're going to throw it away. Come on. There's a point in time in which you kind of got to think, what's the best thing, the best possible option? Of course, there's possibilities for fraud everywhere all the time. What's the most likely option?
Well, obviously there's always a possibility for fraud. There's also always a possibility that there are bad people out there who are going to try to take advantage of the system. But this is a symptom of sort of the larger problem that we've got. And that's a problem that we just don't trust each other anymore. I honestly believe that the people who work elections, most of them are volunteers or semi-volunteers anyhow. They're getting paid for it, but they're really it's not what they usually do. And usually they're taking their day off of something else. And, I really think that they do the best job that they can. No election commissioner or secretary of state wants to have the allegations that, that they somehow facilitated voter fraud. So at some point, we got to trust the system. Absent truly obvious examples of it not working, I think we should assume that it works.
I agree with you. So apparently the way I said that was a little confusing. I was giving an example and saying that somebody might look at my my address and see that I live in Prince George's County. Prince George's County is like 90% Democrat, and throw it away because they assumed I was a Democratic vote. I was a proud Jorgensen voter. And I also got to vote to legalize sports gambling in my state, which is another happy libertarian vote for me. So let's go back to the quiz. Which city emerged from one of the world's longest and most severe coronavirus lockdowns? Was it Cologne, Germany, Marseille, France, Melbourne, Australia, or Sao Paulo, Brazil? I have no idea about this one.
What was it?
Your
Erik?
choice-
Yeah, I'm out of my depth on this one. So.
We're waiting for the audience.
Yep.
You guys tell us, which city just emerged from the world's longest and most severe coronavirus lockdown? Was it Cologne, Germany? Frank says it was Melbourne, Australia. Frank, we're going with you.
Yeah, I should have known that.
It is 111 days. Wow.
My aunt lives there.
Really?
Yeah, I should have known that. Sorry.
That's a pretty crazy
It's a long one.
They were
extensive
getting
lockdown.
paid like $1,500 a week. $1,500 a week to stay home, and like everyone's like, "Oh, is that good or bad?" I'm like, it's horrible. And minimum wage in Australia is $20 an hour. A cheeseburger, like a plain cheeseburger, costs $17. Granted, it's on an island, but when you start elevating the cost of things with these crazy high minimum wages and these $1,500 weekly payments just to stay home, yeah, your cheeseburger is going to be like $40, like within the end of the year.
That's a fascinating thing. I'm going to think that Erik knows this, being a military intelligence guy. There's only 5 regions in the world that are actually completely self-sufficient. They can provide for themselves for everything. The United States is one. China is one. The Ruhr Valley in Germany, Russia, and now I'm forgetting the 5th. Oh, Brazil. Australia, they have farms and stuff like that, but they don't have rare earth metals. They don't have petroleum, any of that stuff. They rely on everything else. And so, when they try to say, oh, we're going to control wages and stuff like that, they're dealing with things that are outside of their control. You can't control every aspect of your economy. It always ends up terribly. But boy, 111 days lockdown, that's pretty crazy. I mean, I think they're going to get a week before the second wave comes. And I mean, I guess they're going into summer. And so they should be in a better place than some places, but I worry about that. All right. Question number 4. More than 90,000 people were given emergency evacuation orders because of the rapid spread of 2 wildfires in which state? Now, I mean, if it's not California,
Colorado.
it could be Colorado, but are there 90,000 people in one place? I'm just kidding. I went to high school in Colorado. But so you guys think it's Colorado?
Yes, I think so. I talked to the chair of Colorado Party, and she was talking about the fires like 2 weeks ago. So that's
Victoria Reynolds.
Yes.
Yes.
Didn't they evacuate Estes and told people that they couldn't
Right.
come back for a while?
Estes Park, where the Rocky
The
Mountain
Shriners.
National Park Museum, National Park is.
The National Park.
Oh, it is California. Boo. Janet Edwards. Janet, why didn't we listen to you? You know what it is? I think that we were a little too early, but
Yeah.
let's see what it says. California, fueled by strong Santa Ana winds in Silverado. See, it was the 90,000 that probably should have gotten us, because outside of Denver, it's hard to have 90,000 people in California, right? You can't shake a stick. I mean, Colorado Springs is 400,000 people. It's a bigger city. Boulder is like 120,000. But they're not in a place like that they're going to get overrun by fire all of a sudden.
No.
Whereas, California is 90,000 people living in a closet just east of Santa Clara. So, state utilities companies are being investigated again because of their problem. They've been sort of turning off people's power to try to prevent fires. And of course, it's one of the problems with a state utility, right? Because if there was competition for the utility market, we wouldn't have to worry about that, because somebody would come in and say, you know what, I'm going to dig and put all. So where I live in southern Maryland, all of our power lines and all of our cable lines are underground. Mainly because we live in this giant forest and the wind comes through and it would take the wires out. But it's awesome. My power never goes out. I mean, it would take, a disaster of, it would, knock on wood, it would take like an earthquake or something to take out my internet connection, which is great, right? I mean, that's all I really need. I don't care about, I guess I need the power too. But if we didn't have, if there was a reason to do it, right, and somebody could get paid for, say, you know what, I will provide you electricity that will not go out and it goes underground, but I'm going to charge you, $25 or whatever. They'd get paid. They would dig the things and they would put the wires in. But the price of electricity is also regulated by the state.
Mm-hmm.
So the companies can't even put in the stuff that makes the most sense because the state won't let them charge what it's worth. And so here's California shooting itself in the foot, making it so that it has all these fires going on, which is a little crazy. All right, next question. The audience is killing us, by the way. An anonymous senior official in the Trump administration who spoke out against President Trump is in a New York Times op-ed in 2018 revealed his identity. He is Miles Taylor. Which cabinet department did he serve in? Is it Energy, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, or Justice? I don't know this at all.
He could have said his name in 2018 and no one would have known who he was.
Right. Miles Taylor is a...
I saw the story, but I don't remember.
Right.
I actually know the answer to this one. It's Homeland Security.
All right. It is Homeland Security. Former Chief of Staff of the Deputy of Homeland Security. Served for 2 years under Kirstjen Nielsen, Mr. Trump's third Homeland Secretary, which is pretty crazy. Left the White House when she was fired. Later became the head of national security relations for Google, but is now on leave. He endorsed Joe Biden, who's been organizing other Republicans and against Mr. Trump's reelection. It's an interesting thing. I'm not going to read a statement right now, but you have all these people who have been. So one of the difficulties, I think, for libertarians in general is we have issue with the fact that there is this professional civil service. But the professional civil service is actually an interesting idea because if you were going to run a company, you always keep some of the veterans around to maintain continuity. They know how things work. I wonder, there was a big story about this on NPR because one of the things that Trump did was they fired most senior people throughout all of government. The argument that it's the swamp. Now, let's take it as written that we want to reduce the size of government. And let's just say, Valerie gets elected 2024. Likely, I agree. And one of her children becomes chief of staff. And she sends them out to say, okay, let's reduce the size of government. Go around, find the people who don't do a lot of stuff and tell them that they can go home. Is the right way to do it to reduce the old people, because the old people do get paid a lot of money. They've been in government for a long time, salary, pension, stuff like that, but they also know how to do stuff. Or is a better idea to get rid of the younger employees who don't necessarily know how to do much, but they're cheaper to get rid of and they are potentially less valuable? It's a fascinating dilemma. If you were to become president, Erik, how do you start reducing staff throughout the various agencies?
So first of all, I would not like to make that mistake, and I will not become president. But you have to have a balanced approach with anything else. Your more senior people are going to cost the government more money, so you're going to have to get rid of a portion of those. However, you still need to preserve institutional knowledge. So, you're going to have to keep some of them to make sure that the individuals coming on board know what the heck is going on. So it's very much a balance, give or take. I know that's a very political answer, but unfortunately, in this case, it's very true.
Well, but a political answer to a political question.
I know.
It makes a lot of sense. But it's interesting because I think that there are times libertarians shy away from a legitimate answer as to how we would get something done because it's not the libertarian macho flash. It doesn't say, how would I do it? I would just fire everybody right away. But, if you became president, you couldn't fire everybody right away. Even, a bunch of as far as I know, all the presidential candidates had sort of a plan for dismantling the government, none of which said we're going to get it done on day one.
Right.
Nobody thinks it can get done on day one. And
well,
so
here's a great point. If you fire everyone on day one and nobody has the knowledge of what's going on, there is the real potential that the entire endeavor is actually going to cost more than actually having a gradual planned step down.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because, as an example, the government has contracts all over the place. Who knows who those contractors are and the people who you're supposed to get paid, except for the staff who've been responsible for managing them. Winding down the government is going to take some cooperation from the people who actually are currently in the government. It's difficult, but if we really want to achieve our goals of smaller government, there's going to be a point in time which we have to say, okay, we need the people who have the expertise in there to help us out in how we're going to do it. It's it's a difficult conversation because libertarians can sometimes be afraid to say, I'm not going to get rid of the entire government on day one. But it's a conversation that we probably all need to have.
I think, I think that the best, philosophically, the best way to get rid, if we assume that you need or that we're going to have some level of government for some period of time, perhaps the best way, to address the question you asked, Dan, is just simply we're going to put in a hiring freeze and we're going to reduce by attrition.
That's wonderful.
And that, you implement that and it isn't drastic, but people have to learn then how to make up the difference if the job really has to be done. And if there aren't enough people, then maybe the job doesn't have to be done. Maybe there are things that don't have to be done. So it results in a reduction of, regulatory burdens and things like that. There's all sorts. You can do that by just saying we're not going to hire anybody else. We're not going to fire everybody, but we're not going to hire anybody else. And over the next 4 years,
that's a tremendous way to look at it, Laura. That's the best answer I've ever heard.
Yes.
And the thing about it is that it makes me think about, what is the largest reduction in the federal government in our lifetime? And it's 1992 to 2000, when Bill Clinton is president. It had absolutely nothing to do with Bill Clinton. It had to do with, all right, here's my invitation.
Soviet Union. Yeah.
Read my lips. No new taxes. All right, audience, who am I? I know everybody else knows. But that guy who we're waiting for you to name, he broke that promise. He agreed to raise taxes in return for the Congress agreeing to something called PAYGO, which y'all can look it up, PAYGO. I believe it's called something or other Omnibus Bill of 1990.
Yeah.
But what happened is that Congress agreed that they would not spend any money without actual funding. So they couldn't say, oh, we're going to spend this money on this and we'll figure out how to pay for it. They either had to raise taxes or they had to cut money for something else. And so that agreement stood in place for 10 years, from 1990 to 2000. And in that time, we went from this enormous deficit, because, the Reagan-Bush years had an enormous deficit, to at the end of Bill Clinton's administration, we had a surplus. We were spending less money than the government was collecting on taxes. It was the largest single reduction ever, just from the government agreeing, okay, we're not going to spend money that we don't have.
Now, to be fair,
Yeah.
Dan, you there's something to be said for the peace dividend. You had the Soviet Union fell and the Cold War. My husband was in the military during that 90 to 95 time frame, and everybody in the military was worried about, okay, is our base going to shut down, because you had all the base closures going on. So there was a dividend that Bill Clinton received as a result of the Cold War ending.
I definitely agree that there is a peace dividend. I don't think defense spending went down during that era, but for sure, a lot of companies that had been selling these high-tech things. So anybody here a golfer?
Yeah.
I actually, the PGA has an injunction that prevents me from defining what I do as golf, because it hurts the brand, but I like to get out on the course. There's this explosion, though, in 1991 of super high-tech golf clubs with military age materials, because all these companies that had been spending all this money and all sorts of other businesses had this release of this incredible technology. So there is actually a peace dividend. You're 100% right, Laura. I don't know why I doubted that. All right.
Never doubt. No.
Never doubt. Well, exactly. I think I see a lot of people screenshotting this. Dan Fisherman admits wrong. Which country voted to replace its constitution, which was written under a 20th century dictatorship? Was it Brunei, Chile, Iran, or Zimbabwe? I know this one.
I know this one too.
Valerie?
I don't know. Brunei still has a sultan, so I don't think them.
Yep. Laura, any preference?
No idea.
I think it's Zimbabwe. What do you think, Erik?
Oh no, well, first of all, I'm a constitutional nut. I read everyone's constitution, and it is Chile.
Chile. All right, we're going to see. I'm pretty sure it was Mugabe in Zimbabwe. However, wrong twice in one show. This is terrible. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Just over a year after massive demonstrations for broad reforms throughout their country, Chileans voted on Saturday to scrap their constitution and write a new one. A process that could transform the politics of the nation. You know, if you were writing a new constitution, I think the American Constitution is a pretty good place to start, right? I mean, we've done a good job of at least, we were talking about this the other day, that President Trump actively attacked amendments 1 through 5, as well as 6's speedy trial, 7, as well as 8, 9, and 10. But aside from that, we have a really good Constitution. The basic premise of it, the division of powers, all that stuff. You'd have to think that writing a new Constitution and assuming that you guarantee rights to the people, that's going to be really promising for Chile.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, this is one of the first constitutions that will be partially written by referendum. So actually, I'm very interested.
Yeah, it's interesting because if it's written by referendum, I worry a little bit about some of the lobbying, but you'd have to think that these basic political issues, people will generally agree upon. You want something that most of the people agree upon. I wonder if they'll be smart enough to enshrine the rights of the minority. Dave Valente is right. It's the Chili Bowl.
I can't wait for Erik to read this new Constitution and then tell me what it says.
Yeah, I mean the problem with Constitution by referendum is, I mean, Nebraska amends its Constitution by referendum is that you have a massive Constitution that that's really political.
Right. It's interesting because we've talked about this before, and I think that this basic idea of being able to pass a law with 51%, that's terrible. That's a terrible, terrible thing. And, the founders, I mean, because the thing is, the filibuster is not really actually enshrined anywhere in the Constitution either, as we know, because the Senate gets to get rid of it when they make up rules. Yeah. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And the Republicans are going to hold the Senate. I think we probably all agree that's what's going to happen. So they probably won't change any of the rules because the Democrats are going to lose the House. Although, we talk about that a little bit. I was shocked at how poorly the Democrats did in the House. Oh, yeah. I mean, they lost 15 seats.
Oh, wow.
And maybe more because there's still 34 races that haven't been decided.
Right.
I think that there are some people that maybe, I don't know if they're doing it consciously, but I think they're certainly doing it, unconsciously, voting for divided government. And people can't stand. We had this happen in the 2nd district of Nebraska. Joe Biden took our 2nd district, but our Republican congressman, who's hardly, who's been running these really close races the last 4 or 6 years, he actually won by a significant amount. I mean, I think that people are saying, "Yeah, I can't stand Trump," and I think Biden. I guess we'll assume an election at this point, but I don't know. But the Biden election, to the extent that it happens, is is an anti-Trump move. It's not a pro Joe Biden vote. You know, I don't think anybody loves Joe Biden. I mean, I think that you know, that, or very few, maybe his wife does. I don't know.
I'm sure Jill does, but you're 100% right. You're talking about essentially what they've been referring to as the enthusiasm gap.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, wasn't there a big campaign near the end, like, yes, vote for Joe, settle for Joe or whatever? Like,
Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Settle for Joe. He's unlikely to start a war.
He's not Trump. You know, I mean,
He's unlikely to end a war, though, too. So
that's yeah.
Right. I mean, that's been one of the most fascinating things about it is this idea that, you know, Joe Biden was in many ways the last choice of most Democrats, but he was just the one that everybody can say, well, we don't hate him. Even though I think there was a large group of people that hate him, like probably 40% of the party didn't want him to win.
Yeah.
But they sort of said, okay, we can get somebody in. This is the compromise. But I can't help but thinking that there's a lot of Democrats out there who feel like this party of this old guy is not their party.
Yeah.
And Democrats, I'm speaking to you. Hang on. Democrats, I'm speaking to you. It's not your party. The Libertarian Party is your home. We're the ones who believe everybody ought to be able to chase their own happiness, and nobody can define that happiness except for you. All right, that's my close-up look into the camera. Let's go back to the quiz. Another hurricane hit Louisiana coast this week. What was it called? Zaire, Zeta, Zika, or Zulu?
This is like the gimme question, right?
Do you get it, Val? What is it?
It's Zeta. Zika. That's hilarious.
It is hilarious. So friends of mine had to cancel their honeymoon, what was it, 2 years ago, because they were going to go to Central America, but they were planning on having kids within a year, and Zika was out there, and so they didn't go. But I do like the idea that there could be a Hurricane Zika, much like there is a tornado filled with sharks. So, yeah, Hurricane Zeta, Louisiana, man, you guys have had it tough. But, you know, one of the interesting things that happened out of, you know, all the hurricanes that New Orleans has had is that there has been a lot of opportunity. And I'm gonna let somebody else come in here, and we talked about this beforehand. Hurricanes bring up the classic thing that libertarians talk about sometimes about why price gouging is sometimes a beneficial thing. Somebody want to hit this easy one? Val, I know you want it.
No, I don't, because I'm not a huge fan of price gouging, but when you explained it a couple weeks ago, I was like, well, that makes sense.
Well,
but,
but that's exactly it. Nobody's a fan of price gouging, right? I mean, we all think that price gouging and taking advantage of people is terrible. But when prices go up, it's in this situation, it's actually not gouging. It's just simple supply and demand. And when the price goes up, price for a bottle of water goes up to $10 a bottle, then everybody who lives within 100 miles who wants to make money is going to fill the back of their pickup trucks with bottles of water and drive them to where you are so they can sell them at $5 and undercut the market.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. And we don't have to do anything about it. Yeah, Sharknado, one of the most libertarian movies of all time. Actually, I don't know if that's true. I've never watched it. After an abandoned newborn was found in an airport bathroom, female passenger on a plane belonging to which airline were pulled from the flight and strip searched, oh my God, to determine whether or not they had recently given birth. This is insane to me.
It's not Singapore. They don't even make eye contact with you on the streets.
Right. So
it's got to be Emirates or Qatar, in my opinion.
All right. So let's not start the Qatar Qatar argument. So we go with your pronunciation because you said it first. We're going to say Qatar for this show. I agree. It's probably Emirates or Qatar because those are companies who don't. Well, we have a friend.
Yes, this is my granddaughter.
Hello.
Hey.
Say hi to everybody.
Say hi. Wait, got to lift your arms up a little more.
You are a superstar. Third generation libertarian coming right there.
Right.
That's awesome. Oh, hello. Also,
Okay.
more grandchildren. And that was the Flash. I saw the jersey.
Yes, that was my 21-year-old who's supposed to be babysitting my granddaughter.
All right, I think we should go with
Okay, we're done.
Qatar. Yeah. Wow. Invasive medical exam after the baby was found. That is insane.
Wow.
And it's one of the things that people don't talk about. So, abortion as an issue is something that I believe is meant to divide us, and it's not worth talking about in terms of a political issue. But the one thing that I say about it all the time is that if abortion is illegal, if anybody knows a family that's had a miscarriage, it is devastating. It is the death of the child they thought they were going to have, and it is tragic. And if abortion is illegal, and a doctor knows that a woman was pregnant, does he have to report the miscarriage to the police? Is there a legal component where somewhere along the line the police come and say, excuse me, but we have to inspect your body to find out whether or not you had a natural miscarriage or you had an abortion? It's just one of those consequences that too much government gets in your way, regardless of where you are about the feeling of the issue. All right, question number 9. We're cruising through this quiz. On Sunday, Pope Francis elevated Archbishop William Gregory to cardinal, making him the first African American to bear the title. Which archdiocese does he lead? I have no idea.
I think it's Washington.
Is it DC?
I think so.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah,
it is. Good job, Chicago native. He's been a natural figure since 2002. President of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And, they've been through a lot of stuff. I actually did hear an interview with him on AMU, so I guess I should have known this. He talked about the fact that the way he became Catholic is that he was not born Catholic, but Catholic Charities in the area, a family brought him into their house and started feeding him on a regular basis, and they never evangelized to him. All they did was the stuff that they normally do, which I guess, they hold hands and say grace and stuff like that. But it worked.
But that's a message for libertarians too.
Yeah.
That we don't have to, we don't have to beat people over the head with, what we believe. We can just talk to them and care about them and, behave in a way that makes them want to find out more about us.
I agree with that 100%. One of the best things I ever heard from a libertarian was when Nick Sarwark was chair. No relation to Valerie. I'm just kidding. When Nick was chair, he went around. He said, I want to ask every libertarian to consider saying this phrase when you're talking with somebody else. You might be right. Because we a lot of times don't convey that idea. It is it's an important thing that we recognize the fact that, other people have opinions, and we don't necessarily have to evangelize. If we show them what we believe and do it in action, that's a lot stronger. Outstanding point, Laura. Thank you. The Chinese technology titan Ant Group, a sister company to the e-commerce giant Alibaba, is set to raise $34 billion in the coming weeks, in the largest initial public offering on record. Which company's IPO will it supplant? Alibaba, Agricultural Bank of China, Big Hint Entertainment, or Saudi Aramco? I do not know this one.
Oh, Erik knows it.
No, I mean, with logic and just deductive reasoning, I think it's Saudi Aramco because that makes sense, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, Aramco is very interesting. The one thing I will say, so let's go with anybody in the audience want to yell out which company had the largest IPO before Ant Group? We'll wait and see. I personally think, and you should never take advice on investing from online people, but
Jim Turney says it's Big Hit.
Big Hit. All right. Jim Turney is wrong.
Erik was right again.
Erik is right. It is Saudi Aramco. Saudi state-run oil company set an IPO record last year when it raised $29.4 billion. The problem with almost any Chinese company is that China has the ability to change the value of their currency, and they've done it several times. So how comfortable are you, investing $10,000 of your money, knowing that the Chinese government may then say, oh, you know what, we're devaluing our currency and your $10,000 is now worth $1,000. Because that could happen. And I'm not saying that we haven't done things like that in the United States. We haven't deliberately devalued the currency, but there is a theory that, and no point in being a libertarian unless you're going to buy into some of the conspiracy theories, that, we borrowed a tremendous amount from China in the early 2000s. And then when the economy tanked, we paid them back pennies on the dollar, because obviously currency is not value. It's not wealth. So they invested a lot of currency, but we retained all the valuable things. And, if you believe that Dick Cheney is an evil mastermind, maybe you buy into that conspiracy theory. That I'm not saying that anybody does. I'm just saying. All right, last news question. Scientists announced widespread distribution of water on the surface of which celestial body? Mars, the Moon, Titan, or Venus?
It's a space question, so I know the answer.
All right.
You can have it.
The moon!
It is the moon, and it's really astonishing because, we worry a lot about sources of water in the place, and there's an interesting thought that if water exists on the moon, you tell me, Erik, but I'm a person who believes that the moon and the Earth were at one point in time the same celestial body, and the moon is a spinoff from the Earth.
I mean, that's very possible, yeah.
Yeah. And so then it's not shocking that, with water being present on the Earth, it would also be present in these places. But also, obviously, you get hit by meteors, and other bodies that carry ice.
Well, I think also one of the things that's so amazing by this is how much water they think is on the moon.
Right.
Because this will almost provide limitless ability to create methane for SpaceX rockets, so it can, in essence, really change the game of getting to Mars by a factor of 10.
Yep. So the good thing about this is, Erik, you've been drafted to be on David Valente's trivia team for the next LNC
I'll
meeting.
take it.
We should do that. We should totally do team trivia at the next convention because
everybody's team me. I'll never be on anybody's team.
You can be on my team.
Chosen, huh?
I have been on a semi-professional trivia team. We call ourselves Smarty McTrivia Pants, and there's a Guinness trivia circuit, and we would play around in the bars in Boston. A tremendous amount of fun. All right, we have actually gone a little long this time, but who else? What else do we want to shout out? Anything big we want to say? Speak to the nation of libertarians. A lot of people stayed with us. Viewership is really high right now. Anything you guys want to say to the libertarians? I know, Erik, I see you're ready.
I'm on it. I just want to say a big shout out. I know a lot of people on the LNC. I know Laura's been doing it. I know Valerie's been doing it. We've been making phone calls to people who ran. But I want to say thank you to everyone who ran. And if you're watching the show, you didn't run, I want you to think about it, because one of the best ways to actually spread libertarianism and make people understand what the Libertarian Party is about and the fact that we are about people and not politics is to actually run, and think about that and start gearing up for that.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Val, anything you want to yell out to everybody?
Yeah, I would want to echo what Erik just said. I made a couple calls the last couple days here, and the positivity and the optimism from everybody. I didn't call anybody who won an office, but every single person that I spoke to was so optimistic for the future and already thinking about how they're going to do things differently when they run in 2022 or 2024, depending on what kind of race they ran, and how they're going to build up a better team and how they're going to do this and how they're going to raise more money. And it was just so, like, especially you're like, wow, I wish that Joe would have gotten more than 1%. But then you're talking to these folks that put their lives, their families' lives on hold for months just to do their run. and they're happy, they're excited, and I was like, it was just a nice recharge for me. So thank you, everybody who ran. I really.
That's awesome. Aaron Shackelford, I want to answer your question. You want to know how to run? lp.org/run. Very easy. lp.org/run. Get there, and we will get you connected with people who will help you go. Laura, you want to shout something out?
Well, I will echo what my colleagues have said, and I had an opportunity to talk to Marshall Burt, newly elected representative to the Wyoming legislature. Yes, last night I guess we talked, and he's ready to hit the ground running. So
Awesome.
it's a wonderful thing to see folks elected. It's a wonderful thing to see people running and spreading the gospel, so to speak. So again, thank you to everybody.
I'm going to follow up on the things that everybody else was saying and talk about the fact that campaigns are more than just the candidates as well. So if you were somebody who held a sign, if you were a treasurer, if you were a campaign manager, something like that, I also want to thank you for all that stuff. And I know everybody else agrees with that sentiment. We've all been in those positions where we've worked on somebody else's campaign, and it means so much to the effort, because when you run for office, it's lonely at times. Every candidate feels lonely. They feel by themselves, and having people on their team who can support them, it's huge. So thank you, everybody who got involved in any aspect of a campaign. I'm here with the at-large libertarians. We're all trying to work to get more libertarians elected. We're trying to make the world more free. And you guys are all a critical element of it.
Let me just say one more thing. You're a Facebook user. I don't know who it is. Said if you gave money, and absolutely, if you gave money to any campaign, that's critical. Keep in mind that in 2 years we're going to be having another round of major elections and a lot of local elections this next year. The Libertarian Party is a great place to send your money as well, because we've got some big plans with the candidate the candidate support committee in terms of what we're going to do to try to help our candidates. So send us a check.
Yeah, and they say money is the mother's milk of politics, and data is its daily bread. Mm-hmm. All of those things really make a huge difference. So, as always, it's you guys who make everything happen. The people who get involved in the campaigns. Donating money is a big deal. Everything you can do, because if we learned anything from this election, it's that the country needs us. Because if we don't make a change right now, it's all going to go away. This noble idea, the American experiment, we're the last best hope for the world. And the Libertarian parties are the only ones who are carrying that flag right now. So let's not let it fail. Let's remember, the mighty words of Abraham Lincoln, that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Libertarians at Large, and we'll see you guys again next